All right, we are back here on Titans Talk, and our phone lines are open 737-7767 if you'd like to join in on the conversation about a Titans loss yesterday, 36-13 to the hottest team in the AFC right now. The Patriots have won 6 straight games. They're on top of the AFC East. Huge showdown next Monday night for them against the Buffalo Bills. The Titans had won 6 straight games as they shot up to the top of the AFC, but all those injuries are mounting, and we've definitely seen that over the last couple of weeks. Your thoughts on the game yesterday, your concern about where this team stands right now, given all the injuries, and as I put before the break, a lot of the players talking yesterday, how they need to reset, both physically and mentally, during this bye week and get back at it. But they are, to borrow Ryan Tannehill's phrase, 100% confident that they can get back on track and win football games again down the stretch and be the team that they looked like 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. How confident are you? Are you at the 100%? Or is it a little bit less than that, given what you've seen the last couple of weeks? 737-7767 is our number. Phone lines are open, and we begin with Everton. Everton, good evening. You're first up here on Titans Talk.
Hey, Steve. Good to talk with you. Listen, I appreciate the case you have made for the Titans as far as what's happened to the team over the course of the last several weeks. But looking at the last 2 games, the one thing I realized that we did a week before is that we got away from our identity as far as being a running team. Yesterday, we came back to, we turned that around. I thought the running game gave us an opportunity to throw the ball more than we did. Are we having a problem with Tannehill as far as not having confidence in him being able to throw the ball down the field? Because there was very little bit of that. And I thought there was enough running, the running game was good enough to throw the ball.
Yeah, and I think they tried off of it, but again, who's going to get open there? And especially down the field, I don't know if you have a receiver right now that can really stretch the defense in that regard. None of these guys are A.J. Brown or Julio Jones, and so you're just trying to run routes where they can find a little bit of separation and hope that Ryan Tannehill can put it in on them. Now, Ryan Tannehill needs to play better. He needs to make some throws. There was a 3rd down throw along the sideline trying to get to Cody Hollister, and he left it inside. That throw's got to get outside, and if it does, I think Hollister makes the 1st down catch, and a drive stays alive. Those are the types of throws he has to make right now, and he certainly can't have 5 turnovers like he's had the last couple of weeks. Yeah. But part of it, when you're talking about the explosiveness of the passing game, part of that's who you're throwing to as well. Those guys have to find separation and give you an opportunity to do that, and I'm not sure it's there right now.
Well, I appreciate your comments, Steve. Thank you so much. But I just think that much of the Tannehill needs to step his game up. This is his time. I realize there's a lot of missing pieces. But I think, you need to feel that the load is on him, and he needs to carry this team right now. The team needs him to be the man. Yeah,
Everton, thanks for the call. I think that's a great point. Ryan Tannehill is a good quarterback. He's been a good quarterback for the Titans. He's won a ton of games since he took over as the team starting quarterback a couple of years ago. I don't think anybody around the league is putting him in the elite category, where Brady or a Rodgers or a Drew Brees used to be. Peyton Manning. He's not in that category. And I think some people have tried to make the case, given his efficiency numbers of the last couple of years, that maybe he was creeping into that. And the counter argument was always, well, he's got Derrick Henry in the backfield. So he's just kind of playing around that because defense is loaded for bear to try to stop Henry. And Tannehill's effectiveness is built off of that. That's been the argument. Well, if you want to shed that label as sort of a game manager or a play-action passer off of Derrick Henry, now's the time. Now's the time for Ryan Tannehill to put this team on his back. And he's done it before. He leads the league in 4th down and overtime game-winning drives since he became the Titans starter a little over 2 full years ago. So he's done it before when he's had to lead them down the field. He's had to make big plays passing. He's done it. But now you're asking him to do it for 4 quarters, Sunday in and Sunday out. And he has not been able to answer the bell in this charge. Too many turnovers. None of the game-defining throws that you need to have at times, like that one I'm talking about to Cody Hollister on the sideline. It's not that difficult of a throw, not that big of a play, but it's a third down conversion that keeps the drive alive. Go back to the running game, which was working so well after that, and hopefully move the ball down the field. But the other thing about the Titans yesterday, the game plan was there for them to have success. The offensive line had maybe its best game of the entire season. Taylor Lewan and Roger Saffold on the left side were absolutely mauling the Patriots up front. The Titans ran for 270 yards without Derrick Henry. They were possessing the ball. They were driving for big chunks of the field. They were doing exactly what they needed to do to stay in the game. And the defense early was forcing the Patriots, yes, they were giving up yards, but forcing them to settle for field goals. That was the recipe to go to Foxborough and have a chance to win. And what happened before halftime and into the second half? Turnovers. The Titans ended up turning it over 4 times. The Patriots never did. And then the Patriots started to cash in on the touchdowns, started to capitalize. And that was the game. But the game plan was there to make it a fourth quarter game and have a shot to try to win it at the end. They started to execute and did really for about a half, and then it all fell apart in the second half. And you got to worry about that, again, given the injuries, that it's going to be difficult to sustain like that. But that's where Tannehill comes in. He's got to be the guy that helps to right the ship or makes the play to overcome the mistake from some of the guys that are being forced into uncomfortable situations right now. Back to the phones we go. Say hello to Wayne. Wayne, what's going on tonight? Hey, Wayne, are you there?
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Good, Wayne. Go ahead.
Steve, it looks to me like this running game has got to be in better shape, has gotten to be in better shape. And you take a team like the Patriots with what defensive-wise is in the top 5 in the league, I'm sure, and they put up that many yards against that team, which is a good thing. But what's messing up is their inability to hold on to the football while they're doing it. And Tannehill the same way with these young receivers that maybe hadn't had enough time with him. So I'd say get these starters healthy if you don't play them another game the rest of the season and win what you can. So maybe some of them will be ready to get in the playoffs and play the game like it's supposed to be played. I'm not a coach. I don't have all the answers, but that's what it does. And Vrabel, as much as said it, he's talking about things that needs to be cleaned up, and that's exactly what he's talking about, is all these mistakes. So
Yeah.
Give me your take on it. What do you think?
There's no question they got to get healthy, Wayne. Thanks for the call. And they got to get those guys back. Because ultimately, you want to win the division, you want to get the home playoff game and all that. But ultimately, especially at this point, when the Titans are on the verge of a 6th consecutive winning season, you believe you're a contender. You want to compete for the whole thing. You want to get into the playoffs and have a chance to make a run and to get to L.A. and have a chance to play for the Super Bowl. And if we're being honest with ourselves, the Titans can't do that with all the guys that are on injured reserve right now. If they can get Derrick Henry back, maybe. If they can get Julio Jones and A.J. Brown back and playing at the level we're accustomed to seeing those guys, all right. We got shot offensively then. Because I think the Titans can run the football, as we saw the other day, behind this offensive line. If the line can stay healthy, I think they can get guys to run the football. But what they have to be able to do is, 1, hold on to the ball, and 2, be able to do what the first caller said, is build off of that. If you start pounding off 5- and 6-yard runs, then you got to suck up that defense and take a shot. and you have to have someone who can make a play. So they need to get healthy. There's no question about that. But you don't have the luxury of just letting these guys sit for weeks and weeks at a time. I mean, number one, you can't lose out. And they just showed last week that with the current team, it is entirely possible to lose to one of the worst teams in the league in the Texans. So even though you got the Jags and the Texans and the Dolphins on the schedule coming up, you can't take those games for granted. You still have to show up and play. And also right now, I'm not totally convinced the Titans are all that much more talented based off of what they had out there yesterday in New England than what Jacksonville will bring here in a couple of weeks. So just because they're a better team overall than what the Jaguars are, I'm not sure they're going to be a more talented team on the field unless they get some of these guys back. And so you got to get some of them back in there. And you also have to work them back in to get them into shape and get them into rhythm before it really counts in January. So getting healthy is first and foremost, but they also have to find a way to keep cobbling things together here as they get a piece back. They get a piece back. You have to pull another guy from the practice squad to do something. They've got to continue to find ways, and that comes down to holding on to the football. You've got to be able to possess the ball. It'd be great if the defense can get them some back, but ultimately what you can control is how you hold on to the football. And the Titans just have to do a better job than that. 9 turnovers in 2 weeks. I don't care if the defense is forcing turnovers. You're not going to overcome that. It's too much. And they know it, and they've got to be better than that when they come back from the bye week. Back to the phones. Go to line 3. And is this Kevin? Kevin, how are you?
Good evening, Steve.
Good. What's going on?
I have a couple things to point out. Number one, you brought up an amazing point earlier that sometimes you have to know who you can trust. And when you don't have a cohesive offense that has not played together, it's tough for a quarterback to look downfield or look for a checkoff. And I don't blame Tannehill for that at all. Pick 6, oops, that's bad. However, there was a couple things in the game that happened that I really found disturbing, especially when the quarterback, Mac Jones, they're calling about how well he is as his completion percentage. Well, when you run a guy across the middle just behind the DBs and make a 3-yard completion, that's great. However, a couple of them ran for 30 yards after the completion. And there was one play in the game, and I want to bring this up, that I don't think anybody in the NFL actually saw, is maybe 7-8 minutes to go in the second quarter. Jalen Mills, their D-back for the Patriots, deflected the ball, and then he ran in the end zone. And he was making a motion like he was carrying an assault weapon. He had his hand and finger by his waist and holding it down. And I can't believe nobody in the NFL picked that up, because I thought in the times and days of the era of everything going on, how can that not be fined?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was there, so I'm watching it live and not all the advantages of replays and some of that, but I didn't see it. So I'll have to go back and try to look for that. I didn't see it there at the stadium, but if that happened, that's odd, and I don't think within the spirit of any of the NFL rules for taunting and celebration and some of those things. So that is very odd, but I think your points are well taken there, Kevin, so thanks for the call. You got to be able to come up and make some of those plays with the trust. And I go back to something, Ryan Tannehill's very first start, if you go back to 2019, when he took over for Marcus Mariota, came into the game in Denver the previous week. Titans got shut out, come back. The next week they're playing the Chargers. And in that game, Titans are trailing in the fourth quarter, one of the many fourth quarter to overtime game-winning drives that Tannehill had. And he fired a couple of balls. One was to A.J. Brown. The other one was to Anthony Ferkser. A couple of balls that were into traffic, down the field, and he just zipped it in there, showing trust to the guy he was throwing it to. And you're talking about a guy who was making his first start with the franchise that day. He came off and he was ready to rip and fire. But I think there was a level of trust there that you know who you have with A.J. Brown. And he's always had a connection with Firkser, something they need to exploit more right now, by the way. But right now, I don't know who you feel that guy is. If you got to force something 15 yards downfield, or you got to throw a jump ball down the field, do you do that, or do you look for the dump off? Because who's the guy who makes that play? Again, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has given them a bunch this year. But he's given them a bunch because he's had to do way more than he's ever been asked to do before. You know, Chester Rogers isn't going to win you a jump ball down the field. Neither is Cody Hollister. So they can serve a role, but it changes what you can do offensively. And that is the thing. There is a trust factor there to be able to make certain throws to certain guys at certain points of the game. And right now, I just don't know if that's there between Tannehill and any of these guys. And that's something they got to get fixed, because they had 93 yards passing yesterday. You're not going to win in this league, no matter how many yards you run for, with 93 yards passing. So they got to find a way to get more out of the passing game. Back to the phone, say hello to Gordon. Gordon, good evening.
Hi, Steve. I've been listening to some of the comments, and I agree with a lot of what you've said. There are a couple of things. First of all, if we win either against the Jags or the Texans, is that going to clinch the division? I believe it will. But neither game is guaranteed anymore. About yesterday, I was encouraged to see that we had a run game. We have not had one since Derek went down. And yesterday, we had a good run game. But like you said, a run doesn't mean anything unless they hold on to the football. Another thing and I've been noticing this for weeks, I think Ryan Tannehill holds on to the ball too long. He doesn't see a receiver open. He's waiting for somebody to get open. He's got wheels. You know, I've seen several times and it looked like he had 6-7 yards ahead of him. And instead he threw the ball or he got sacked. And I just think that he needs to get rid of that ball quickly. If nobody's open, take off, gain 3 yards. It's better than a 6-yard sack. The other thing I noticed, we were down in the 2-yard. Well, it was like first and goal from the 5, I think. Yep. And they handed the ball off to Foreman twice. I thought those were good calls, even though he didn't get into the end zone. But they needed to get creative on that last play. Try a bootleg. Try an option pitch, to the outside. Do something different. Instead, he threw it, and we got an interception. And even if it wasn't an interception, it would have been an incomplete. So I would like to see a little bit more imaginative play calling down by the goal line. Yeah. So interested in your take.
Yeah, thanks so much. As always, we appreciate the call and the thoughts. Good stuff there. Number one, you got to hold on to the ball, whether that's interceptions or whether that's fumbles. Again, 9 turnovers in 2 weeks is way too much. When you think about it, the Titans have had essentially 800 yards of offense in the last 2 games, and they've scored 26 total points. That shouldn't happen in the NFL, but did, because while they're picking up chunks of yardage, they're turning the ball over. So that's just the number one thing they've got to fix is, while we can sit there and complain about lack of explosive plays or not picking up this or not picking up that, they're moving the ball. And the Patriots defense especially is a good defense that they moved it against. But they're not getting the explosive plays right now, with the exception of Dontrell Hilliard's 68-yard touchdown burst, which was an explosion right before halftime. But they're not getting the big Henry runs. They're not getting the 20 and 30-yard pass plays to a Julio Jones or an A.J. Brown. So they're going to have to move the sticks and drive the field and be prolonged, which makes it more difficult because it's going to be a 12 or a 14-play drive. But you got to stay steady and you got to hold on to the ball. And sometimes, and I said this last week in the Houston game, sometimes you have to be content to take 3. You never go broke making a profit. And I thought in the Houston game, more so than yesterday, Sometimes they got a little too aggressive and thought, we got to get a touchdown right here. Sometimes it's okay to just say, Randy, knock through the uprights and get us 3. Now, yesterday he missed one, and that can't happen either. They need him to get back to being automatic, which he was early in the season. But sometimes you just need to do that. And then to the play at the goal line, I agree. My biggest complaint there actually was the third down call, though, because they didn't get anything out of the third down call, and it left them at basically 4th and goal from the 2. And there, the percentages will tell you that it's pretty much got to be a pass. And so you don't have as much in the arsenal to try to get the defense to suck up on the run. I love the idea of getting Tannehill out where his legs can be of use, and they tried to do that. They did roll him out that way. But again, if you're New England, you pretty much know it's a pass. And so you can have somebody spying on him and everybody else back in coverage. And then at some point, you got to just throw it in there. It's 4th down. You hope it doesn't get intercepted because that moves them off the goal line. But you got to just try to force it and try to make a play, and that's what he did. So of all the interceptions, that's maybe the most excusable in some ways from Tannehill. But again, you got to be really efficient in the red zone right now for this team because you're not going to get there a ton. So when you get down there, you have to make the most of it. And I agree. Some questionable play call decisions, I think, leading up to the 4th down call in that series for the Titans. We got to take a break. We'll come back. More of your phone calls after this. 737-7767, the number. This is Titans Talk on News Channel 5 Plus.